During the last 3 years of the global pandemic, the world has changed in many ways. Some changes are positive, and some have only increased the challenges to our fragile civilization and life on Earth. Threats to our planet have not paused during this period of disruption, nor have the planet's many defenders. Their work has continued where it is needed, even during the hardest of times. Safeguarding the ecosystems upon which our lives depend, working on every continent to protect water, soil, air, plants, animals, and land from the destructive forces that harm the planet. Confronting the reality of climate change, which threatens everything we hold dear, and ensuring that those who continue to destroy the Earth are held accountable. Their extraordinary impact is felt everywhere. Their potential is limitless. Welcome to the 2023 Goldman Environmental Prize.
Good evening. Please welcome John D. Goldman, President of the Goldman Environmental Foundation.
Good evening, and welcome back. On behalf of the entire Goldman family, including my sister Susie Gelman and my niece Jennifer Goldman Wallace, we are delighted that you are joining us after 3 extremely challenging years of the COVID pandemic. What a testament to the power of this community that we have come together tonight to honor these defenders of the Earth in person. I first wish to offer a heartfelt thanks to our Executive Director, Mike Sutton, and all the staff of the Goldman Environmental Foundation, to our esteemed jury, and to our many partners for keeping the critical work of the prize going through these last 3 years. It hasn't been easy, and it's been particularly difficult for those on the front lines of the environmental battles around the world. I also want to acknowledge that since we last came together in 2019, my niece Jennifer has joined the board of the Goldman Environmental Foundation, succeeding her father Doug after his many years of service. I am truly excited. I am truly excited that we have begun a transition to a younger generation, that they will inherit the issues and the opportunities of our time. And I know that my parents and her grandparents would be delighted with the passing of the mantle. But this prompts me to ask, what can we do to pave the way and support the generations that will follow us? What will our legacies be for this fragile and beautiful planet? This is the 34th year of the prize, established at a time when environmentalism was not nearly as mainstream as it is today, when grassroots leaders often toiled away in isolation far from the public eye, and when taking on challenges with enormous odds was done at great personal risk. Today, the world has awakened to acute environmental crises like climate change, fossil fuel extraction, and pollution of our air and water. A grassroots activist in Malawi, combating plastic pollution in her own country, is directly connected to us, and vice versa. And she has much to teach us about how we can do that work at home, where we live. Her efforts and our fates are all intertwined. The environmental defenders that you will meet shortly care deeply about our planet and the future of our civilization. They have dedicated their lives, risked their well-being, and challenged the powerful and the greedy. And they have done so during a global pandemic and lockdowns that have severely compromised the work of activists throughout the world. If there are lessons learned from this pandemic, they are, first and foremost, we cannot survive in isolation, and we cannot sit idly by and leave the critical work of repairing our world to others. We must recognize our interdependence. We must be inspired to act, knowing that every small step forward will spread like the ripples of a pebble dropped in a lake. We must recognize our singular obligation for the next generation and the generations to follow is to ensure that this planet will be a healthier, safer, cleaner, and more just place for all living beings now and the days to come. Let us commit to action. Let us commit to boldness. And let us commit to being warriors, battling environmental degradation, just as our extraordinary prize winners have done. Because if all of us commit to this, we will change the world. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Now, as we celebrate the 2023 Goldman Prize winners, please join me in welcoming our host for the evening, a phenomenal Bay Area environmental leader and activist, the founder of Outdoor Afro, and a passionate supporter of nature, Rue Mapp.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back. I'm Rue Mapp. I am thrilled to welcome you to the 2023 Goldman Environmental Prize. This is our first in-person ceremony since 2019, and we're so grateful that now we have the opportunity to convene this wonderful environmental community at a live event once again, and to honor and celebrate together in person the 6 prize winners that you will soon meet. Throughout the years of the pandemic, we continued our work to support grassroots activists, but unfortunately could not meet in person to recognize their achievements. This was unquestionably a loss for all of us, the prize winners themselves and the global community that appreciates and admires their work. We want to acknowledge the 19 prize winners from those 3 years and affirm that they are very much a part of our prize community and family. So we are here tonight after a long hiatus, and why do we come together? Why have we sought to return to this stately venue and brave BART, traffic, and even international air travel for this event? For me, it's about hope. Let's be real. This is a hard time in the life of our civilization. There is so much to fear, to despair about, to make us feel apathetic and negative. But how do we find, maintain, and spread a positive mental attitude? I believe that it's through celebrations like tonight in this growing global community in which we share stories of courage, excellence, beauty, and vindication. Ordinary human beings leading through the darkest of times and circumstances and winning extraordinary victories. That is hope. That is love. And that is the future. And we are all a part of that today. Today, this global community gets to pause for a moment to celebrate those at the front lines who teach us, inspire us, and give us hope. For me personally, I became an environmental champion as a young girl when I fell deeply in love with nature while growing up and exploring the rolling woodlands, lakes, and creek beds that surrounded my family ranch in Northern California. My connection to the creation that is the environment has only continued to blossom through the work of Outdoor Afro, which, hey, thank you, which since its outset has steadfastly focused on the imperative for more people who look like me to discover joy, healing, and love for the planet and one another so that all may thrive. Thank you. The Goldman Environmental Prize was founded in 1989 by Richard and Rhoda Goldman as a way to honor unsung grassroots heroes who have tackled environmental challenges and inspired the rest of us to take action. Tonight, in addition to meeting these 6 people at the front lines of environmental change, we will also hear a performance from singer-songwriter Aloe Blacc. And now, let's meet 6 ordinary people who have an extraordinary impact on the planet.
Good evening. I'm Sigourney Weaver, and I am honored to introduce you to the winners of the 2023 Goldman Environmental Prize. The eastern reaches of the Mediterranean lie along the majestic turquoise coast of Turkey. These unique waters are home to numerous endangered species, including the Mediterranean monk seal and sandbar shark. But the Mediterranean is also the most overfished area in the world and is being severely impacted by climate change and invasive species.
Right now, almost 90% of the entire fish stocks in the Mediterranean are totally collapsed.
Zafer Kizilkaya, a marine researcher and photographer, spent decades working around the world. Returning home to Turkey in 2007, he was shocked at the degraded condition of his home waters and was moved to take action. By 2012, Zafer and his team had established a marine-protected area in Gökova Bay as a pilot project for what Zafer hoped would become a vast network of MPAs along Turkey's southern coast.
15 years ago, the Gökova Bay was a kind of nuclear war aftermath-looking place underwater. No macroalgae, no fish, nothing, and the small-scale fisheries were collapsed.
With protections and enforcement in place, the MPA was soon teeming with marine life that spilled into surrounding areas, boosting business for local fishermen and giving Zafer important momentum for his larger goal.
After the success in Gökova Bay, we decided to make a huge ecosystem restoration project starting from Gökova Bay all the way to Antalya, almost 700 kilometers of coastline.
Zafer was proposing the largest interconnected MPA system in the Mediterranean. It was a lofty vision that would require years of planning, research, and advocacy. In 2017, he set out to make it happen.
We had biodiversity assessment reports done telling us the really important areas like spawning grounds, nursery grounds, critical habitats like sea grasses, Mediterranean monk seal caves, and turtle beaches. On the fisheries side, we did the socio-economical analysis with all the communities. We convinced small-scale fishers that fully protected areas will work and will save your livelihood and your future.
Through education and outreach, Zafer won the support of local communities. But the sheer size of the proposed MPA posed a major challenge for enforcement. Zafer's solution was to expand his highly successful Marine Ranger program.
Without enforcement, all the marine protected areas are just paper parks. This, ranger systems are the most important programs in all the expansion areas.
Partnering with the Turkish Coast Guard, Marine Rangers would be the key to enforcement. Illegal fishing, however, was not the only ecological threat. Rapidly warming sea temperatures have allowed highly aggressive, invasive species to overwhelm entire ecosystems.
That's a huge problem. What could we do? Okay, why don't we turn into an economy? We have to eat them, we have to consume them.
Zafer and his team worked with fishermen to target invasive fish like lionfish and promoted them at seafood festivals, restaurants, and among celebrity chefs. With a comprehensive management plan in place for the new MPA, Zafer's final hurdle was getting government approval for the designation.
So all the stakeholders had meetings, and at the end we proposed our protected areas to the government, bringing the government into the field, showing them what we have done.
In August 2020, Zafer's efforts and determination paid off. The Turkish government approved additional marine protected areas along 310 miles of coastline, including 135 square miles protected from industrial fishing and 27 square miles of no fishing zones. This safeguards marine ecosystems and bolsters local fishing communities. As a result, Turkey has established itself as a leader in marine conservation.
We are the only NGO patrolling on the sea, fighting with illegal fishers, fighting with industrial fishers, and luckily government is supporting us. Coast Guard is behind us. Maybe not many people can appreciate this today, but one day they will appreciate more because they will understand that this is the only way we can save the nature and people at the same time.
For outstanding environmental achievement for Asia, the 2023 Goldman Environmental Prize is awarded to Zafer Kizilkaya, Turquoise Coast, Turkey.
I am here today because I have a deep love for the sea and for the abundant life that it supports. Unfortunately, a long history of exploitation of the Mediterranean Sea and its many resources has depleted all kinds of unique species, including the Mediterranean monk seal, sea turtles, bluefin tuna, sharks, groupers, sponges, and many more. We don't know what the Mediterranean looked like beneath the surface when the first civilizations emerged along these turquoise waters. But we have done so much harm to this wonderful ecosystem. Decades of overfishing have since inflicted a huge toll. Fish stocks have collapsed, decimating the incomes of millions. The future of our oceans is now at the mercy of greedy industrial fishing fleets who see wildlife simply as profit. The situation is dire. But I am fortunate to join a handful of conservationists in the region who are trying to stand up to this threat by documenting what is at stake and educating others about why we must save our marine environments. We have set up a network of marine reserves designated as no fishing zones, as well as extensive, highly protected areas that are closed for industrial fishing fleets. This integrated approach has shifted the tide for both ecological conservation and local livelihoods that rely on marine resources. We have already seen a spectacular 10-fold increase in fish stocks in protected areas, which in turn has increased incomes for local fishing community by over 400% within just 5 years. As a result, fishing communities overwhelmingly support our efforts. While marine protected areas currently cover 8.3% of the Mediterranean Sea, the fully protected areas are less than 1%. We are still far from the target of protecting at least 30% of the oceans by 2030, as set in the targets of the 30 by 30 plan. We don't know how much time left before the damage becomes irreversible. Beneath the waves, in the oceans and sea with which we share this home, there is a cry for help. We need the public to understand the importance and urgency of creating marine protected areas and supporting conservation efforts. Protecting the oceans now is critical for the future of the planet. Thank you for your support.
Northern Sumatra in Indonesia is home to Lake Toba, the world's largest volcanic crater lake. The region is the only place where rhinos, orangutans, tigers, and elephants coexist in the wild. Historical records indicate that Sumatran benzoin resin, used in incense, perfume, and medicine, has been harvested and traded by the indigenous Tanau Batak people since the 8th century. Amid a national push for industrial development within rainforests, the lives of the Tanau Batak people took a dark turn when Toba Pulp Lestari, a paper company, began to destroy their biodiverse forests to build eucalyptus plantations.
All of the people in the village experienced the severe decrease in benzoin production, and they knew it was the impact of the presence of the company. We used to have 50 kilos of benzoin resin after harvest. Now we only have 5 to 10 kilos. In the past, we'd go to the forest for bathing, washing our clothes, and drinking water. The company uses a lot of chemicals, so we got rashes and other terrible health problems.
Deeply concerned about the well-being and environments of these indigenous communities, Delima Silalahi knew that she had to get involved to protect their territory from encroachment.
I felt it was really important for me to be part of that struggle because it affects me as part of the Batak culture. The benzoin trees only grow in this area. That's why I felt the responsibility to be part of that fight, because it's part of me.
In 2013, a precedent-setting court ruling created the opportunity for Indonesian indigenous people to claim legal stewardship of their traditional forests. Delima and her grassroots organization, KSPPM, developed a plan to use the law to protect Sumatra's forests. They set out to map the territories, educate locals on the new law, and form a campaign with villagers from 6 Tanau Batak communities around Lake Toba.
Since the beginning, it was women who participated and initiated this strategic struggle. Why? Because there's a close relationship between women, the earth, and the land. They want to maintain the land not only for the current generation, but also for the next generations. With the destruction of the earth, the burden of women increases. When our lands and forests are being disturbed, Batakese women feel that we will be most affected. So that is why we are ready to do anything about it.
Delima ensured that women's voices were heard all the way to the highest levels of government. Their monumental efforts lasted 9 years and included media outreach, workshops, marches, and tree planting. They made their case to and enlisted the support of government officials, including Indonesia's Minister of the Environment.
The situation in the forests is worsening. That's why I am seriously pushing the process of tree planting, so that at the end of the year, 100,000 hectares of land can be covered with new forests.
When we gained the support and guidance of the Minister of the Environment, we felt confident that we would succeed in fighting a big corporation like TPL, because our constitution guarantees the rights of indigenous communities to be acknowledged and protected by the state.
In February 2022, due to the community's efforts and support from the Minister of the Environment, the Indonesian government granted 6 Tanah Batak communities legal stewardship of 17,824 acres of their traditional forests.
I was so happy, feeling that I was not alone. There had been a time when our movement to stop TPL felt like we were walking down a lonely road. But the general public finally saw the destruction that happened in the Batak forests, and some of our land rights were restored.
For outstanding environmental achievement for islands and island nations, the 2023 Goldman Environmental Prize is awarded to Delima, Silalahi, North Sumatra, Indonesia.
Hadirin sekalian, izinkan saya untuk memulai sambutan saya dengan mengungkapkan rasa terima kasih kepada jajaran keluarga Goldman karena telah menghargai pekerjaan kami di tingkat akar rumput dalam mengadvokasi hak-hak masyarakat adat dan melindungi bumi kita. Pencapaian ini merupakan hasil kerja KSPPM bersama-sama dengan gerakan masyarakat adat. Penghargaan ini sangat berarti bagi kami dan akan menjadi penyemangat untuk terus mengerahkan upaya terbaik kami dalam menjaga bumi kita. Saya berterima kasih kepada suami saya yang selalu mendukung, kepada putri saya yang tidak pernah berhenti menjadi teman dan rekan diskusi dalam berbagai isu tentang masyarakat dan lingkungan, dan kepada putra saya yang mengizinkan saya menghabiskan banyak waktu yang seharusnya saya curahkan kepadanya untuk bekerja dengan petani dan masyarakat adat. Merupakan suatu kehormatan bagi saya untuk berdiri di depan Anda hari ini, mewakili gerakan masyarakat adat Batak di Indonesia dan menerima penghargaan ini atas nama masyarakat adat. Bagi kami, tanah adalah identitas. Perjuangan ini adalah untuk melindungi Ibu Pertiwi dan menjaga identitas kami sebagai masyarakat Batak. Beroperasinya industri pulp dan kertas selama lebih dari 30 tahun telah membawa kesengsaraan bagi masyarakat adat dan mengakibatkan degradasi lingkungan secara masif. Selain merusak hutan, termasuk pohon kemenyan, tanaman endemik yang menjadi sumber penghidupan masyarakat adat, penebangan hutan telah merusak sungai-sungai, mengusir satwa keluar dari habitatnya, dan memaksa mereka untuk berebut ruang hidup dengan masyarakat setempat. Masyarakat adat di Tanah Batak masih terus terancam akan tersingkirkan oleh pembangunan yang merusak lingkungan yang dilakukan oleh pihak-pihak yang hanya mementingkan keuntungan. Oleh karena itu kita harus berdiri bersama, berkolaborasi, dan melakukan upaya terbaik untuk mencegah kerusakan lingkungan yang mengerikan ini, serta melindungi orang miskin dan lemah dari dampak kerusakan yang ditimbulkannya. Pemerintah mulai menyadari bahwa mengakui dan melindungi hak-hak masyarakat adat tidak hanya bermanfaat secara ekonomi, tetapi juga menjaga kelestarian lingkungan yang tidak kalah pentingnya. Dan sesungguhnya, masyarakat adat selalu berada di garis depan perjuangan kita semua dalam melawan perubahan iklim. Kami akan terus memperjuangkan hak kami, melestarikan budaya, serta melindungi hutan kita. Kami membutuhkan dukungan Anda untuk meminta pertanggungjawaban pihak-pihak yang berkuasa dan menghentikan pembangunan yang mengancam masyarakat adat dan lingkungan kita. Bersama-sama kita dapat menjaga Kemenyan sebagai pusat kehidupan bagi generasi penerus kita. Terima kasih banyak telah mengundang saya di sini. Horas!
Chilekwa Mumba grew up in the Chingola district of Zambia. Just outside of his hometown sit the massive Konkola copper mines, with an 11-square-mile copper operation that includes a smelter, a sulfuric acid plant, a tailings leach plant, a refinery, and the world's second-largest open-pit mine. It is the biggest employer in Zambia.
You have a thriving operation on one end, and yet right immediately next to the mine, you see people are not living the way we should live. People's lives were disturbed because of pollution by the mine. It was absolutely shocking to me. Something has to be done about it.
In 2004, after UK-based Vedanta Resources took over the mine, local communities first noticed contamination in the Kafue River and its tributaries, on which they rely for drinking, fishing, bathing, and agriculture. The river emitted foul odors. Fish were dying in large numbers along its banks. Crops and livestock were decimated, and local villagers suffered from severe health issues.
I became an environmental activist quite by accident, having learned of the trauma around the farming community. I started to look at environmental law firms. I wrote to almost 100 of them to get justice for those affected communities.
Even though a previous court case in Zambia against the mining operation had failed, Chilekwa was determined to bring Vedanta Resources to court in the UK. Lee Day, a prominent UK-based law firm, agreed to take on the case. Chilekwa began arranging meetings between community members and the lawyers.
I think the foremost issue was getting the communities to believe that something could actually be done about it. I had to work quite closely with the community and get their trust. It was a challenge because there are always people saying they can't fight such a huge corporation, it's impossible, they're wasting your time.
Chilekwa informed villagers about the lawsuit and helped gather water samples from the river and blood samples from residents, all while fighting against disinformation about the lawsuit and the sampling needed to make the case. In 2017, he and a lawyer from Lee Day were arrested while meeting with community members.
I just had this drive in me that we won't fail. Justice will somehow, some way be attained for these communities. It got my heart and it became personal, a personal fight for me. And from then on, I haven't looked back.
In April 2019, the UK Supreme Court found that Vedanta could be held accountable in UK court for environmental damage from the copper mines operations. And in 2021, Vedanta settled and provided financial compensation for nearly 2,000 people from the 4 villages near the mine.
It brightened up the whole community. For me, the most important part of the settlement is how it is going to end up educating a whole generation of kids who have even a greater impact in the future.
The Vedanta case set legal precedent and is already being applied in UK courts to hold companies accountable for their overseas environmental destruction.
We cannot overstate the importance of taking care of the environment. If we protect our environment, we're protecting our future. And we've been given a responsibility that we just don't look at the now, but look ahead for those who will come past us.
For outstanding environmental achievement for Africa, the 2023 Goldman Environmental Prize is awarded to Chilekwa Mumba, Chingola District, Zambia.
Hello again. Unfortunately, Chilekwa is not able to join us in person tonight, but he's live on Zoom to speak directly to us.
Good evening. I consider the enormity of this Goldman Award to be an honor, privilege, and responsibility for my country and the planet, and not necessarily in that order. All three of these aspects give me a certain inexplicable self-awareness and purpose. For this, I immediately thank God and my pillar, being my wife foremost, who's over there, and my children for standing above and beyond with me through the entirety of the 6-year battle we faced from different angles. I salute the law firm Lee Day, and specifically Oliver Holland, who provided so much guidance through what turned out to be a tedious process to ensure accountability and reform for mining operations present in communities that were powerless to challenge degradation of their environment. I also give great credit to the local Zambian team members, some of whom I cannot mention by name as they were anonymous whistleblowers. And I want to acknowledge the communities involved for standing up for themselves and doing this not just for themselves, but for the future of our planet. To the Goldman Prize, I can only say thank you for providing an extraordinary platform for that which seems so ordinary in our everyday lives on Earth. May the other recipients before and after us continue this endless preservation of this planet we call home, for now and the future. I beseech all environmentalists to also take keen interest in the current matter concerning a World Heritage Site, the Lower Zambezi National Wildlife Park in Zambia, where certain mining conglomerates seek to disturb the environment with new mining activity against the wishes of locals. Thank you for your support.
And here to acknowledge the award on his behalf, his wife, Helen. It's amazing to be here to witness these feats of bravery and dedication. Clearly, to be a leader is to step forward when something hard needs to get done, even when there is no roadmap, nor roads to drive on. And now, I'm very pleased to introduce Aloe Blacc, a California-bred singer-songwriter whose music ranges from cumbia to soul to hip-hop and defies genre classification. His recent work has supported criminal justice reform and peace in the Ukraine. Aloe Blacc.
Good evening. Clap your hands to him. Broken hearts everywhere, from stepping on love, we don't care. Somebody tell me what we gon' do. Even though it's plenty to share, people hungry in the streets, it ain't fair. But you don't think about it until it's you. Now I'm gonna say how I feel, and what I wanna say is love's the only thing that's real. Now I'm gonna tell you what to do. Just believe that love's the only thing we have that's true. I said that love is the answer. It's the answer to the questions in your mind. Love is the answer. It's the answer. If you're looking, you will find. To the bridge. Just look around the whole wide world. So many beautiful things to see. Take my hand and come along. Spread some love with me, yeah. 'Cause love is the answer, yeah. It's the answer to the questions in your mind. Love is the answer. It's the answer. If you're looking, you will find. The answer is love. 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 Feeling my way through the darkness, guided by a beating heart. Well, I can't tell where the journey will end, but I know where to start. They tell me I'm too young to understand. They say I'm caught up in a dream, and life will pass me by if I don't open up my eyes. Well, that's fine by me. So wake me up when it's all over, when I'm wiser and I'm older. All this time I was finding myself, and I didn't know I was lost. I tried carrying the weight of the world, but I only have two hands. I hope I get the chance to travel the world, but I don't have any plans. Wish that I could stay forever this young, and not afraid to close my eyes. Well, life's a game made for everyone, and love is the prize. So wake me up when it's all over, when I'm wiser and I'm older. All this time I was finding myself, and I didn't know I was lost. Wake me up when it's all over, when I'm wiser and I'm older. All this time I was finding myself, and I didn't know I was lost. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Aloe. Let's give it up for Aloe Blacc. It's incredible. All right, at this time, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge some past prize winners here in the audience with us tonight. Please stand up. Give them a round of applause. Beautiful. Wonderful. I see y'all up there. Thank you. And we are joined by 500 future leaders, young people from around the Bay Area learning about environmental issues through school and our nonprofit partners. Just wave your hand in the air if you're one of those students, and let's give them a round of applause. The next generation. I see y'all up there. All right, now I would like to take a moment to recognize a prize winner who we lost in 2022 at the age of 68. Bruno van Petegem was a fierce advocate and lifelong defender of oceans, reefs, and marine life. He won the prize in 2001 for protecting New Caledonian reef ecosystems and went on to work to mitigate toxic chemicals from everyday spaces. We remember Bruno and celebrate his contributions. All right, so now let's meet our next 3 prize winners.
The Sare Maiba Indigenous Territory is located along the Tapajós River in northern Brazil. It encompasses more than 400,000 acres of Amazon rainforest. Rich in biodiversity, the region has been home to the indigenous Munduruku people for some 4,000 years.
Nós temos muitas vidas aqui, porque os animais também.
We have many lives here. The animals are part of our life. The forest is part of our life. The river is part of our life. The people always say, our river is sacred.
But the Sare Maiba territory isn't formally recognized by the Brazilian government. This leaves the river, the forest, and the people vulnerable to an onslaught of environmentally destructive industries.
The government looks at our territory like a business plan. With the killing of rivers and land grabbing, everything is covered with indigenous blood.
Alessandra Korapi Munduruku is president of the Pariri Indigenous Association, which supports communities in the Tapajós River region. In 2020, she learned that Anglo American, one of the world's largest mining companies, had 13 copper mining research applications in Sare Maiba territory.
Então, quem estava abrindo essa porteira, né?
And who was opening the gates for them to exploit our territory? The Bolsonaro government. He was asking them to do it. He was authorizing it. Did anyone ask us if you wanted a mine? No, no one came to ask us.
Mining has already destroyed millions of acres of Brazilian rainforest, which is a globally significant carbon sink and has taken a major toll on the Munduruku people.
Não importa.
It doesn't matter to them if the indigenous people get sick from the mercury. It doesn't matter if the indigenous people are forced to drink river water with sludge.
Alessandra immediately sounded the alarm in her community.
Anglo-América vai destruir nosso território.
Anglo-American is going to destroy our territory. They are going to throw us off our land. And we refuse to accept that.
She also began consulting with a coalition of indigenous communities and NGOs to create a strategy to fight the mining company. Meanwhile, the Munduruku patrolled their territory, traveling deep into the forest to measure levels of deforestation, videotape illegal mining, and install signs to mark their territorial boundaries, a process known as self-demarcation.
Que a gente espera, né?
Demarcation is what we are waiting for, the formal recognition of our territorial boundaries, when they finally give us the document that says, this land belongs to you, the indigenous people.
In December 2020, after an assembly of 47 villages, the Munduruku published a declaration against further mining activity. Alessandra followed that with a letter to Anglo American demanding that it withdraw the permits. Anglo American responded denying it had any plans to mine in Sare Maiba territory.
Ou seja, é mentirosa.
They are liars. Don't try to trick us, because we will investigate. We will search for information.
Despite attacks on her home and threats to her life, Alessandra was unrelenting in her campaign.
Só querem aprovar projeto que nos massacra e nós não vamos deixar. O povo Munduruku não vai deixar.
In May 2021, after months of intense pressure, Anglo-American announced it was withdrawing 27 approved mineral research permits on indigenous land, including the 13 in Sare Maiba territory. Their decision protects a critically threatened area of the Amazon.
Isso foi uma vitória muito grande.
It was a huge victory. We realized that we are like little ants. When the little ants join forces, we get stronger, and we got stronger until we won the battle against Anglo-America.
For outstanding environmental achievement for South and Central America, the 2023 Goldman Environmental Prize is awarded to Alessandra Korapi Munduruku, Sare Maiba Indigenous Territory, Brazil.
Boa noite a todos. Trago aqui comigo a voz da Amazônia, do território Sare Maiba, do povo Munduruku, que significa formiga vermelha. Sou uma mulher indígena. Estou diante de vocês esta noite para lembrar ao mundo quem somos nós. Povos indígenas que vivem por toda a terra, que protege floresta, vidas para vocês, seus filhos e seu futuro. Nós sentimos honrados pelo reconhecimento da nossa luta coletiva, pela proteção do nosso território ancestral frente à mineradora Anglo-América. São muitos projetos de morte que vão afetar a nossa vida. Quero dizer aqui que não vamos parar de lutar, de defender a nossa casa. Como porta-voz dos povos indígenas do Brasil, aqui hoje, sou uma de muitas mulheres, crianças, parteiras, jovens, pajé, caciques, que dedica suas vidas à proteção do meio ambiente, que faz parte de nós, que vive em nós. Para o povo Munduruku, nossa floresta, nossos rios, animais, nossos locais sagrados também são vida. No Brasil, resiste há 523 anos pelo nosso direito de viver. Somos mais de 300 povos indígenas no Brasil, sem contar os nossos parentes isolados. Falamos mais de 277 línguas diferentes. Somos muitos, somos diversos. Mas não apenas nós merecemos ter direitos respeitados, mas todos os povos tradicionais do Brasil merecem. Resistimos e lutamos pelos direitos da terra e do povo indígena contra a força da ganância, pois somos conectados com a terra. Se aqueles com capital e poder tiverem sucesso, nós perderemos. Nós, mulheres, Munduruku, estamos perdendo o nosso rio e a nossa saúde. Nosso corpo, nossos filhos estão contaminados com mercúrio. Mas temos que seguir lutando pela nossa existência, pela proteção do nosso território, pela Mãe Terra que mais sofre. Cada de nós tem a responsabilidade de fiscalizar o seu país e suas empresas. Mineradora traz violência e destruição para a floresta, para o nosso rio e para o nosso povo. Apoie a nossa luta para demarcar, reconhecer as terras indígenas, para que possamos protegê-los para as futuras gerações. Presidente Lula, cumpra sua promessa. Demarca o nosso território e demarcação já, mineração não. Sauê!
Finland is a land of snow and ice and interconnected lakes, rivers, and wetlands known as peatlands. These boggy expanses of partially decomposed plant matter have been slowly building since the end of the last ice age, and they cover some 30% of Finland's surface area.
Peatlands are not always the sexiest to look at, but in fact they are amazing. Like the Amazon, they are one of our best aids in the fight against climate change.
Tero Mustonen is a fisherman and a leader in his village of Selkie. He is also a co-founder of Snow Change Cooperative, a global network of local and indigenous communities working on climate change solutions.
We discovered the immense capacity of peatlands to be able to restore our waters. They are keeping carbon on the ground and they are drawing down CO2 from the atmosphere in massive quantities.
But after World War II, Finland began to industrialize, which meant cutting down its old-growth forests for timber and draining its peatlands for peat mining. Peat is burned like coal for energy production.
Now we have discovered that peat is more polluting than coal. It's not only the burning of the peat. When the peatlands are drained and no longer underwater, the peat disintegrates and releases all of its carbon directly to the atmosphere.
The Linnanso peatland near Tero's village of Selkie was drained and turned into a peat mine by the state energy company.
I grew up seeing how peat mining destroyed our landscapes, and all of this biodiversity were lost.
In 2010 and again in 2011, toxic runoff from the peat mining site caused a major fish die-off in the nearby waterways. The local people, many of them subsistence fishermen, were devastated.
The pH level of the discharge was 2.77, which is comparable to battery acid, and that's why they killed all the fish and other life. I was the head of the community at that time. Here we were, facing this pollution event and a dead river. We had a choice. Do we let it go or fight it?
Fight is what Tero and his community did, ultimately forcing the energy company to close the site and provide initial financing to restore the peatland.
And what we are seeing here is a transformation of a place where it was devoid of life, bursting back into life.
In 2017, with the restoration of Linnanso as inspiration, Tero and Snow Change launched a major rewilding program in Finland. By purchasing degraded peatlands, they could begin returning them to their wild state.
We are seeing the largest rewilding and restoration campaign ever in Finnish history because of this place. Traditional knowledge guides a lot of the work that we do in restoration and rewilding. Traditional knowledge of the Finnish villages and indigenous knowledge of the Sami.
Traditional knowledge is paired with the latest science, and the restoration begins. The first step is to bring water back to the landscape.
By raising the waters, there are immediate benefits. We are able to stop soil-based carbon release and emissions on day one.
Since Snow Change's first land purchase, Tero has led the restoration of 70 peatlands throughout Finland, almost 130,000 acres.
We have been able to demonstrate a big climate solution that will help the whole planet. And it has become a symbol for great hope for many people. I'm filled with reverence for how powerful the comeback can be if we are making it possible for nature to guide the work.
For outstanding environmental achievement for Europe, the 2023 Goldman Environmental Prize is awarded to Tero Mustonen, Selkie, Finland.
San Francisco. Thank you. Speaking for myself and all of Snow Change, I am very thankful to the Goldman Environmental Foundation for giving this very first prestigious award to Finland. I also want to acknowledge that we are here today on Ohlone land, unceded. Lastly, my wife is here, Kaisu, who co-leads, so let's give a big hand to Kaisu. We are the guardians of northern waters, Finnish lakes, rivers, peatlands, and wetlands. We are restoring actively Finnish and indigenous Sami waters and forests back to life. We can consider these territories to be community conserved areas or indigenous conserved areas. At the center of this work is the preservation and restoration, sometimes called rewilding, of peatlands. Peatlands are critical ecosystems and too little understood. They are the interconnected parts of catchment areas that store water in floods, maintain biodiversity, and keep carbon in the ground for all of us. After the rainforests, as we heard, peatlands are the second lungs of the world. In fact, 1/3 of world's soil-based carbon is still stored in the northern and Arctic peatlands, and this is critically important for climate resilience. This makes our part of the world almost like the second Amazon and a central place in the fight against climate change. For example, in my own region of North Karelia, the peatlands are supporting water quality that enables the extremely rare landlocked Atlantic salmon to survive. Only 30-40 motherfish came back last year. These peatlands are also the places where the wild forest reindeer, or woodland caribou, as it's known in North America, go to give birth to their young. They are places where life begins again. Join us in safeguarding these northern waters and spread the word about the importance of peatlands. They help the whole planet. Kiitos. Thank you.
Calhoun County's Matagorda Bay on the Texas Gulf Coast is home to more than 300 bird species and a diverse marine ecosystem that once sustained thriving local fisheries. Today, the bay's survival is threatened by severe contamination from the petrochemical industry, including Formosa Plastics, the region's biggest manufacturer of thermoplastic resins. Fisherwoman turned activist Diane Wilson began fighting Formosa over 30 years ago.
Formosa Plastics is an international polluter known for retaliation against activists and workers who speak out. You knew nothing about what they were making, what they were emitting, and then all the dolphins started dying. And it was scary.
As the ecosystem collapsed, Diane took action. She investigated sources of toxic waste in the bay, organized community meetings, and questioned regulatory agencies. But it seemed Formosa was above the law.
I would have workers who would call me telling me about spills, about burying drums, having ditches running with the chemicals out into a field, and there was no enforcement.
Diane's efforts to hold Formosa accountable were met by anonymous threats of violence as well as inaction by regulatory agencies, suggesting widespread corruption. But a turning point came in 2008 when a Formosa whistleblower informed Diane that the company was manipulating Clean Water Act violations.
He proceeded to tell me about the pellets. Formosa makes 1 trillion pellets or nurdles a day, and they lose a lot of the powder and the pellets through 10 stormwater outfalls, and so Formosa was discharging this plastic everywhere. And they have been doing this for 27 years. Yep, they're all in the grass.
Nurdles, the tiny building blocks of all plastic products, are highly persistent pollutants that act like toxic sponges, concentrating harmful chemicals that contaminate the ecosystem when birds, fish, and turtles mistakenly consume them. With renewed focus, Diane organized a team of waterkeepers to help her document and report nurdle pollution. She identified discharge points and conducted daily sampling by land and sea.
This area, the entire thing was solid pellets.
Diane ramped up awareness and gained media attention, but complaints to regulatory agencies continued to fall on deaf ears. So, in 2017, armed with indisputable evidence, she engaged Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid to formally sue Formosa for violations of the U.S. Clean Water Act. Her team enlisted expert witnesses and presented 2,400 samples of documented nurdle contamination. Thanks to Diane's tireless efforts, the case was a slam dunk. In December 2019, a federal judge found Formosa to be a serial offender with extensive historical and repetitive violations of the law.
They were guilty, so basically it was going to be $50 million, zero discharge, enforcement, and we pick where the money goes.
Diane's hard-won victory represents the largest civil settlement in Clean Water Act history. Formosa has also spent more than $450 million to remediate damaged shorelines and reach zero discharge of plastics. Diane continues to monitor and report violations while ensuring that settlement funds are used to restore the environment and uplift her community.
It will educate the public, it will educate the plants, it will revive the fisheries, it will help nationally to set a standard, to set a precedent. The plastic age needs to end.
For outstanding environmental achievement for North America, the 2023 Goldman Environmental Prize is awarded to Diane Wilson, Calhoun County, Texas, United States.
Well, good evening to you all. I'm real pleased and honored to be speaking here tonight and receiving this award. For 34 years, I have been fighting a plastic giant on the Texas Gulf Coast. It's Formosa Plastics, Taiwan-based, and an international polluter. I was 40 years old, I had 5 kids, and I was working in a fish house. Now I am 74. It should tell you you're never too old to do this. Yeah. Thank you. When I started, I had no experience, no support, no money, and people mostly said I was crazy. They said I was a hysterical woman. They told me to go home. They said, go back to the kitchen, Diane. And they would tell my husband, can't you control your wife? I would call meetings about the threatening pollution and the destruction of our fisheries, and the main people who showed up was industry. They had video cameras in the back, video and everything. They even once brought a stenographer and set her down in the front row. And you know, that scares people off. Then they threatened to sue me, and that scared off all my board of directors. I couldn't find a board of director for ages. And when I didn't stop then, they tried to bribe me. And when that didn't work, a helicopter landed in my front yard, shots were fired, and my dog was killed. Then my boat was sabotaged, and it nearly sunk with me on it. And when I had a demonstration, the company hired 300 workers and paid them overtime to picket me. But I persisted. And the reason, and I want you to know, the reason I persisted was because the Bay was alive to me. She was family. When I was a kid and we lived near the water, I walked on her shores and I waded in her waters, and I literally, when I was around 5 years old, I could see the water, and she was just like my grandmother. And I vowed that company was not going to get the Bay. They were getting everything from the state of Texas, from local officials, but they were not going to get the Bay. There comes a time when the home needs defending, the line needs drawing in the sand, and those that dare cross it go at their own risk. Now, you might ask how do you draw the line when you don't have experts, you don't have lawyers, you don't have allies, and you don't have money? Well, you use your body. I did civil disobedience when I didn't know what civil disobedience was. And I did hunger strikes when I had no idea what a hunger strike was. And I have now done 13 hunger strikes. Because the funny thing is I found out that civil disobedience works. When you put your intention out there and you take your body along for the ride, things happen. And a famous man once said, "A reasonable man adapts to the world, but an unreasonable man makes the world adapt to him." We are all too well behaved. We have to become unreasonable for this planet Earth. I just want to say, throughout this journey, I've lost a lot of stuff. I lost my marriage, I lost my boat, I lost my job, I lost a lot of friends, but the funny thing is how you can lose it all, but you gain your soul. So I'm gonna leave y'all with two thoughts here. One, your actions matter. They all matter. And number two, and Nancy, I hope you're hearing this, is that we need to hold these companies accountable in Texas, but especially in Vietnam, where we're now fighting a battle against Formosa Plastics to make them accountable for destruction of the fisheries and over 7,000, the lives of 7,000 Vietnamese fishermen. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Way to tell it, Diane. I mean, Zafer, Delima, Chilekwa, Alessandra, Tero, and Diane are new heroes of mine. They have each done the seemingly impossible and created a positive impact for the planet that is contagious. If we leave you with just one thing tonight, let it be hope. The hope that these six have given us tonight, as shown through their actions. And yes, each of us, no matter how ordinary we are, has a responsibility to do our part. And there are a million ways each of us can do more. And for starters, you can check out the goldmanprize.org. You can scan the QR code at the back of your program, and you can see how you can support each of these phenomenal leaders in their work. As is tradition, you are all warmly invited to a reception across the street at City Hall. And this year, out of an abundance of caution, there will be no prize winner receiving lines, but there will be plenty to eat, drink, and you'll join up with so many new and old friends. So please come celebrate with us. And now I'd like to invite the 5 present prize winners back to the stage so we can recognize their achievements one more time. Once again, thank you to our prize recipients for their dedication, to you in the audience for being a part of the solution. Good night, and see you across the street and next year.